Dudes. Um, so this time we're gonna start with class-based components integrating into our reconciliation algorithm. So I'm just testing it works fine, what we've done before, which is good. I just wanna check the structure. Okay, so for now we only use JSX to represent host components like native DOM elements, divs, articles, sections, and whatnot. And now it's time to dig into custom React components. First class-based components, then then functional components, and then we're gonna enhance them with context API, lifecycle methods, and then the plan is to start digging into the new hooks API. Okay, so before we do anything, we definitely won't need any of these, because in an ideal scenario we will just simply have a button, and if we want to change something we use the internal state and pass it down as props, and in some other components we might conditionally render things. So I think we can get rid of everything here, and if we do so, yeah, all the buttons are gone, which is fine. Okay, so what we need is let's just start with some simple stuff like class main extends component. So that's what React will look like, right? So let's just from our class component, and in either scenario I could do something like this, and it will throw an error. Component is not defined. Yeah, there are a lot of things that is wrong with this code, but yeah, first is components. So in an ideal world, component is imported from React, but we don't have it. So let's do something like export component from component, and let's create this component new file index.js, and what we need to do is export class component. Okay, so I think that should compile. Yeah, so there is different error, which is fine. It's gonna stay there for quite a long time. Okay, so that differs from what we had previously, and also it's not Sacrian section. Okay, so for now what we had was we created fibers, and if you remember, we had fibers here. We had type element type. This was like a div or section. It was a string all the time, and the tag was host component. So now we need to dig into these things. The host component comes from constants. And we need to create another one. Let's just put it alphabetically. Okay, so we'll have a class component. And what we can do now is remember we had a create state node function, which was called from like the placement, yeah, create state node element. So that was responsible for, if you go to the create state node, the create state takes a React element and returns either a DOM node or a React instance. So we only dealt with the create DOM element part, which is when it is a string, but also its type of fiber type equals string. We can rewrite this to fiber.tag equals host component or fiber. It's just simply host component, because yeah, fiber host component, then create DOM element as if fiber dot tag equals class component. Then we want to do different things, so that's the case when instead of a DOM node we will return a React instance. So return create React instance with fiber. So create React instance, we can create a misc function for that. Okay. Default as from create React instance, and now we need to actually create the folder, create React instance. Okay, and it will return something. Create a React instance, takes a fiber and returns a React instance. Okay, we will implement this later on, but that's enough for now. So if it's a host component, if fiber tag, well, I think it's that self-explanatory. I don't really need to explain what's going on here. I cannot read the punchline unfinished, fine. Okay, so what's gonna be the difference here is, you remember we had this begin task, and now it's hard-coded that reconcile children will be called with these two properties, but the problem is that okay, so let's actually console log the fiber out if we get to the point. Okay, so okay, one more thing. The tag is not quite right, so we hard-coded the host component here, which is not right. So we need to do something right. Get tag, for example. Let's create a function called const get tag, and yeah, so it takes a React, maybe we should call it element, yeah, that just a side note, what to call it, element or fiber, because we only using the type and props as far as I know. So we can revert the, like we are using fiber tag at the moment, but we can revert it to type. So I will revisit this issue later, element or fiber to use. Okay, so anyway, so get tag will be element, and yeah, that's basically like return element type of element dot type equals string, then return host component, otherwise class component. So get tag okay, so now we have tag class component in the last one, which is good, I guess. Okay. Okay, we can pass to the create state node. We can pass tag. We can pass get tag element, I suppose. Create state node. Element. And now we can have the element and tag. So it's even simpler. Okay, so tag, we can call it element. It's just simply like the only field that's missing from the element that we are that we need is the tag. So if we provide a tag as an argument apart from the element, we can get away with a React element. It's just for better understanding later on. So class element create React instance. Okay, so create React instance returns null, so the state node of here should be null, undefined, which is expected. We need to fix that later on because we don't know what this create React instance does. But that's definitely true that if you have a class-based component, you don't want to create a DOM element, at least not now. Okay. Okay, so we can put here element maybe, because element dot type element. Okay, so create DOM element takes a React element and returns DOM node. Okay, create React instance, still a mystery. Fine. Okay, so state node still undefined. Fine. The problem is that we don't know how to proceed, right? So we did some modification. We know how to differentiate between host node and the class-based component, but here we have this console log in the fiber, so I want to get rid of the other console logs before we have we have it here. So the problem is that reconciled children creates fibers out of the children. Now the problem is that if you have a class-based component, you can see like the children is an empty array, which is fine, but we know how we as developers create JSX out of a class with component. If we go back to our implementation, we know that this is the render function. So the way to do that is call this render function, and if you call it, you get back the JSX you need, like you need to render. Okay, so the next question is how the hell we call this render method? Like we have the main here. Okay, but what's gonna happen now? Okay, what's gonna happen now is we need to create an instance out of this component. That's the first thing, and as the name implies, that's why we need this create react instance. So what we're gonna do here is we're just simply going to create a const instance, and it's gonna be so if you pay attention, we have this type right here. So the type is not a div, it's not a section, but instead it's a function, as you can see, and it's a constructor function. So it's pretty special function in JavaScript world. So what we can do is we can instantiate a new instance out of it with the usage of the new keywords. So new fiber.type. So if we create that and console log the instance out, here it is. So what we have is we have an object called main, whereas the proto points to component, which is kind of expected because we used this so we use the extend keyword. So what happens if I console log the instance dot render out, because that component should have a render method like here. So we have a render method. So if we call the render method, you can see that the index JS at the 8th line, you have the well, it's not JSX now, it already got compiled to objects. So you have the props, you have the type, which is a section, and the children should be a text element with the node value, props node values from class component. Text element, yeah, from a class component. So we have the instance now, we just simply created it, and now we can actually return it. So return instance, and now if I run it again and go to the class component, the state node shouldn't be undefined. The state node is there, and there it is, it's main. So now comes the good part, because when I get to reconcile, not to reconcile children array, but begin task, I don't have fiber props the children, which is absolutely fine, but I can render something else. So if fiber dot tag equals class component, do something as if fiber dot tag equals host component. Okay, but if that's the case, fiber remains the same, but instead we should have fiber. So to access the main, simply we need to have the state node, and the state node is basically the instance, so we can call render on it. So now if I call this, okay, that's definitely not a good sign. Nothing happens. Okay, fiber state node render. So if I come here, what happens if I console log the verified children? I think it might be an infinite loop what I caused. is it? Okay. Okay, what could be the problem? That's an interesting fiber. It has nothing. Okay, so it's as if fiber. Okay, sorry. So we did not cover one case where it's a host root. Fiber.tag equals host root. Okay, so now it's total different. Okay, so it's pretty good. I have no idea what's happening because too many console logs. Okay, so these are the children probably from here. Okay, we have the section here, text element. So we got to a point where we have the our class-based fiber rendered, and instead of relying on the props.children, we simply call the fiber state node render, which is fine. So now nothing is being rendered to the screen, which is quite odd, right? So we need to do something, and the problem is it throws an error. Item parent the state node append child is not a function. Okay. So the problem is with the painting phase, and the problem lies in the commit work function. If I just commit work, okay. So the problem here, we only covering the placement phase, obviously, so we're not complicating things. But now we have a fiber, whereas the state node is not a DOM node, but the state node is actually a normal JavaScript object, which was instantiated from the class declaration that we created at the JSX level. So, and as a normal JavaScript object, it doesn't have an append child function, and even if it had, there is a possibility that the other state node that we want to append, it's not a DOM node. So if either of them is not a DOM node, then it will throw an error. So we need to cover these cases. So let's create a parent DOM parent effect parent fiber, and parent fiber should be let's do fiber equals item, and the parent fiber equal item dot parent. So if we look at the JSX, this is a fiber, obviously the section, and the main is a fiber. But according to this implementation, what we just want to do, we want to get to the section fiber, and we want to append this DOM representation to the main. So we're calling append child on main, which is not a function, and it cannot do the thing. So what we need to do first is we need to traverse the tree upwards until we find a DOM node where we can attach things to. And the way to do that is parent fiber dot tag not equal host component or host root, parent fiber equals parent fiber dot parent, and actually we need to change this parent fiber state node append child fiber dot state node. So one part of the problem is solved. So this function will always be valid, since we at the very worst case scenario we reach the root when we can attach something onto it, but still this fiber can be a class-based component. So just imagine that we're trying to attach the main onto this div and it's still going to fail. So to address this issue, we need to skip this step. So if fiber dot tag not equals host component, then just equals host component, then only do this bit. Cannot read property tag of undefined. Commit work 200 and parent fiber. So we don't have a tag, which is weird, isn't it? Tag. These guys have tags. So what doesn't have a tag? Cannot read property tag of undefined. Why? Let parent fiber item parent. That's interesting. Parent fibers. Okay, sorry. Interesting. But it's host component and host root. Maybe it's yeah, sorry, it's the other way around. Yeah, it's the other way around, I think. Okay, that's definitely better. So from class component, okay, so is that what we wanted to have? Yeah, from class component. So I think that got rendered. Let me have a look if it's in the right place. So we expect a section to be a descendant of this div. which is red. So expect a section to be, okay, that's exactly what we wanted. Okay, I think that's pretty good. Alright, so we done the first bit. Before I finish, I just wanna do another bit that's gonna be quite self-explanatory. So one of the things that we can do is passing down props, right? So why shouldn't we do something like this? It's a section, and this will have this dot props dot text. So that's pretty much one of the main features of React. And this will throw a canary property text of undefined. Okay, so in order to create that, and in order for the cross-based components to have access to the props, we need to pass it down, right? And the thing to do is we have the fiber, and the fiber at this point has the props. Yep, it has the props, and this is with the new keyword. This is a constructor call basically. So if I do something like fiber.props, then I expect it to cannot read property text of undefined. Props. Okay, yeah. So we have access to the props, but we don't have a component, at least not a customized one. So what we need to have is a constructor, which will have the props. And what we can do here is I think this dot props can be equal to props or the object maybe. Yes, okay, so now what we did is we just simply passed down the props, and now it can have, so that's basically the super constructor, like the constructor of the component that you extend from. And if I go back here, yeah, okay, so now we have access to all the props in our components, which is pretty damn good. So I can do color equals red, not red, purple, and I can do style color this dot props dot color. Okay, that was a pure choice, but it can be seen. Nice. Okay, so we are able to pass down props into our components. So I think that's pretty sweet. We are getting somewhere. So let's continue from here in the next video, where we're probably gonna go and implement some state into our components. See you until then, guys. Bye bye.